Hello there. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. Well, it is Friday the 26th of August after dinner. And it's time, after a rather long break, since about 2017, I would say, to get back to work on Old Hank. This here 29 closed cab Model A pickup. And the first thing we need to do on Old Hank is remove the bed, because we're going to investigate the coilover shocks that are holding up the back end of the truck right now, and see if they're the right length, if the spring rates are right. That's what we're going to start with, and might do a little modification on the rear cross member of the frame as well to allow some more room for exhaust routing. Anyway, all of that needs to start with the removal of the bed. You see, I spent a little time this afternoon cleaning this out. There was a bunch of miscellaneous stuff in here. You know how a pickup bed kind of gathers goodies. Well, this one sure did. Been sitting here, like I said, now for, let's see, what is that? 5 years almost. I think November is when we took the Blue Heinz apart in the other garage. And we haven't done a thing on this since then. So, like I say, we're getting back into it now. See, here's the, I don't know if I've ever shown you the inside of this. I just kind of put the seat bottom back in there this afternoon. You're going to be seeing a lot more of this. Anyway. So, like I say, we're getting started on Old Henry, or Old Hank. I forgot. Old Hank, I think, is what we were calling him. So, we'll talk to you later. Bye. Okay, well, there's a beginning. You can see I got the fenders off. And there's 2 more bolts, and the bed will come loose. Not those 2. Because that's what I thought too. That's just a carriage bolt holds a piece of wood that's under there. But there's 2 more bolts up at the front of the bed from underneath that mount it to the frame. That are all that's left, holding it onto the truck, onto the chassis. And the bed can come off. I'm going to stand it up on the front end here on a dolly and put it up there. See where that bike's laying? That's going away. The bed's going to be standing up there when I get it off the truck. I'll show you more later. Bye. Hello there. Today's the 29th of August, Monday. So as you can see, we're playing with toys today. Well, that's part of the day. I did the chores first. Remember I said I wanted to start working on Old Hank. Here's the first step. See, I made this trapeze here to get this thing off of the chassis, because it's not, you unbolt the 2 bolts on the front of the frame and it wants to tip over and go right off the end. It's not balanced. And it's not centered. Even with this, it's not balanced. I got it. I have the sling centered, and I guess the tailgate must be awful lot heavier than the piece that's at the front end. So it was drooping quite a bit in the back. So you notice I got it in the back hole there on the sling thing there. But anyway, here's the first step. You can see what I was talking about now, of how there isn't a whole lot of room for exhaust to go over the top of that rear end and miss the chassis. And also how the coilovers are in the top adjustment hole there, and the springs are about halfway up, wound about halfway up the bottom adjustment. So I think those springs are simply too short. They need to be about 2 inches longer. And obviously the shock needs to be about 2 inches longer too, I think. Not that I'm going to jack it up that high, because right now there's about 1.25 inches between the top of the tire and the lip of the fender. I'm probably going to go one tire size bigger. I have to look that up and see how much difference that is. Probably not more than a 1/2 inch in diameter. You know, in radius, let's put it that way. But anyway, so what I'm thinking of doing is, as far as the exhaust, is cutting this here and changing that angle so this piece comes back much straighter, which will give us more room right there. Notice the dust. It's been sitting in the garage here now untouched since we started working on the Blue Hinds, and that was late 2017, so it's coming up on 5 years. It's been sitting here, nobody's fucked with it. Ooh, nobody's worked on it. Anyway, like I say, there's the first step. There's what the front looks like, where it attaches to the frame. That little bracket right there. On each side, there's a bolt goes into the frame. And then right in the middle of the wheel well, there's another fastening that goes right there. See that hole, that little tab they stuck out there with the little hole in it? And that's all that holds that box. So the whole ass end of it just hangs out there in midair. So ooh, I think these were rated 1/4 ton, which is 500 pounds. If I'm not mistaken, they were rated 1/4 ton. Because remember, these are like almost the first pickups. I don't know if Model Ts, did they have a pickup? Maybe at the end of the run. 26, 27, maybe somewhere in there. I'm not sure. Anyway, so much for that. Later. Hello there. Welcome back to Blue Hinds Garage. It is Monday, Labor Day, September 4th. And we're here in the Blue Hinds Garage working on Old Hank. You see, we got Old Hank moved in here yesterday. And you notice part of him's gone, part of him's missing. Anyway, you see the Blue Hinds is in attendance here. Just kind of laying around. But anyway, what we're up to here is a number of things. I started out earlier this week by ordering some new coilovers. These are Alden American coilovers. I talked to the guy down there and he sent me what he recommended. We're using here, the ones that we took off are over here on the bench. See them there? They're roughly, I think, 13 and a half inches long, fully extended. These are 16, and those were in the top adjustment hole. These are 16 and they're in the bottom hole. So they're a longer shock with a longer spring, which the guy tells me offers you a better ride. The longer the spring, the better the ride. And I'm happy with that so far. By the way, these old shocks were never used, but they've been sitting here on this chassis for 25 years. And I noticed when I put them in the vise to unload the springs, and you know, with no spring attached, you can pull and push on the shock. They're a gas shock, and they're also Alden. Probably got them in like 1980, yeah, maybe 1990. Yeah, because this project is roughly 25 years old, so 87, 88. There's no gas left in those shocks, it feels like, because there's almost no resistance either direction, opening the shock or closing the shock. Anyway, that's just an aside, an interesting observation. I got these and I installed them, And I ran across a couple of issues in doing that. You notice the adjustment valve right here on the top. On this shock is facing the center of the chassis. On that shock, it's facing the outside of the chassis. I installed this one first and it went on perfect. It went on, it fit the top and the bottom. It was, with the bolt in there, it was touching the top and the bottom. In other words, no misalignment visible. I put this one up there with the valve facing the center as well. And the bottom of the shock was probably 1.5 inches away from the mount. Like there was a big misalignment. I turned the shock around 180 degrees like you see it now. And the shock went around. I put the bolt in the upper mount and the shock went on perfect. It touched the bottom mount. So what we found, we did some investigation, keep the story short. What we found is that bushing in the top, which they installed down there before, down in Southern California where they make these things, where they sell these things. They install that bushing for you because there's an option whether you want a bushing and a sleeve or you want a bushing and a bearing. I chose the sleeve because my understanding, I was told that's more appropriate for street use. The bearing is more intended for race applications where you're adjusting the steering. You might be changing the pinion angle, so you're creating a slight out of alignment condition. The bearing, I think, is spherical, so it allows for that. At any rate, so there was we found the problem was with the bushing itself. We removed the bushing and the sleeve and put it back in, and it's rotated a little bit, so now the alignment is vertically is pretty good, but what it's doing is twisting the shock. So the bushing, when you put the sleeve in the bushing, they're neoprene bushings. When you put the sleeve in the bushing, it appears as though it kind of gathers up the bushing, or either that or the hole was drilled crooked in the bushing. One of the two. I have to talk to the guy tomorrow. At any rate, so what we decided through the course of all of that we put this together, this stuff, these attachments for all of this stuff on the differential, on the chassis, the 4-bolt attachments, the upper shock mounts, all that stuff now is just tacked on. We got a bare frame and a bunch of brackets, all the kits. And we installed all this stuff 25 years ago. And at this point, we don't remember what we thought and what we measured and what we. So it's time for a review. And what I'm in the process of doing here today is I'm going to set this up. So on these cribs, I've got 4 of these that we built a while back. I'm going to set the chassis up on the cribbing so that the frame is level. And once I have the frame level, then I can check all of the angles, the degree angles of the motor, the degree angles of the pinion, the degree angles, if any, of the coil, the lower coil mount, because it's attached to the differential. So I got to review all of that. I'm setting this up today. I'm gonna jack this up and set the chassis on the, like I said, on cribbing and jack stands, whatever it takes to get the chassis level. I've got a digital degree finder, like a digital level degree finder, angle finder, that I can set on the chassis, I can set on the motor, I can set on the differential or whatever, and get exact degree. When we did this 25 years ago, we had one of those needle, I don't know what kind of analog, whatever you would call that. We had one of those little needle protractors that kind of everyone was using at that time. And that's as accurate as you can get it, but it's probably not, it's not nearly what the digital one is going to show. So that's what we're up to here today. Like I say, we got this thing moved over to this garage yesterday. And it's tight. There's the bed. And the other thing with the new shocks was the spring rate. I kind of went away from that. The guy at Alden recommended a 220-pound spring, and when you put an inch of preload on that spring, the ride height is supposed to is supposed to equal 14 to 14 and a half inches between the two mounting locations, the upper and the lower. In other words, the shock should be sitting between 14 and 14 and a half inches mount to mount with the weight of the vehicle on it. Well, obviously it doesn't have the weight of the whole vehicle. The bed's not on there. But with what you see here with the chassis and the cab, no fuel in the tanks, obviously. The tanks, I think, hold 10 gallons apiece or 8 gallons apiece, something like that. I have to look that up too. It didn't compress those springs at all. So right now, with the weight of the chassis as it sits on those springs, we got 16 inches from top to bottom. And that's going to be, when I put fenders on this, that's going to be way too high. So like I said, I've got to figure out the chassis first, check our alignments on everything, and then put the weight of the bed back on top of it and see what it does to those springs. I have a feeling the springs are a little too stiff right now, so we may need to adjust those. At any rate, that's what we're up to right now. Long story, but all of this is long story because it gets quite involved. It would be nice to be able to come out here and put stuff on it and move on to the next thing, but it never works that way. Anyway, so be aware. If you're doing this, be aware. That's just the norm. All right? Anyway, see you later. Bye. Okay, hello there. Here we are again working on Old Hank. Been reviewing the fabrication that we've done on this chassis 25 years ago. I think 26 years ago. The documentation that I have a whole binder. It's not down here right now, it's upstairs. I have a whole binder full of documentation that I've collected in the course of getting this far on this. And it looks like the earliest part of it, like when we bought the frame, when I bought the frame and all the hardware, the kits for all the attachments and everything, was 1996. And so that's when we attached everything that's here, all the bracketry and everything for the floor bars and the coilovers, the axle mountings and all that stuff was done then. And what I've been doing, right now I have the frame so that it is level. I mean, I got that digital level right there, that little device right there. And you put that on the frame rails right here. You put this thing there and you put that little, it's magnetized. You put that little thing on the straight edge, it reads 0. Put it on the other side, it reads 0. You put it on that piece of tubing that's going across the two frame rails, it reads 0. And I have a piece of tubing across the frame rails in the front also. This frame is straight front to back until you get to that Z right there. In the front, right in front of the motor, I got another little piece of tubing going from one side to the other. That reads 0. So the frame itself is sitting at exactly level, so that I can take degree readings off of the motor and the rear end and pinion and all that and compare it to 0. Okay, I don't know what difference it makes. They say put it at ride height. You're comparing one component to the other component. I don't see what difference it makes, whether it's at ride height or anything else. You just need a reference point. You need to be able to compare the angle of the motor to the angle of the pinion and some of these other things. The hangers for the coilovers, they tell you in the documentation they want those plumb, level, 0. They show it in a drawing. So that's what I'm doing right here. These little mounts that are tacked to the top of the frame, I had to cut 2 of the little tacks. So if you put that angle finder thing, that level I mean, on that, I accidentally hit a button and stopped the video. If you put the angle finder on that vertical, you see it reads 0. Because what I did is I cut the 2 tacks that were on the back side of that mount and closed the gap, because it was about 0.35. It was almost 0, but it wasn't exact. In that 26 years since we put this together, we've gotten a lot more accurate tools. We were doing this with a little dial type, spring or whatever, protractor. One of those little Sears things with the magnetic base. They get close, but they're not nearly what this digital thing is. So in that 26 years, we've gotten tools that are a lot more accurate, give you a lot more precision. And obviously we've gained a little skill in the course of those 26 years as well. So I'm checking all of this. And like I say, some of the stuff, this thing now, this hanger for the coilover, has to be moved a fraction of an inch to be at 0. It's, like I said, I think it's under 1 degree or right around 1 degree. It needs to be 0. This side's the same. So what I'm going to do, what I'm attempting to do here is put these verticals on, get them nice and solid. I'm actually going to put a little brace under here that goes to the frame. I'll clamp everything so it braces that, makes it real sturdy. And I'll unbolt the 4 bars and make myself a little spacer that goes between that vertical and the coilover mount so that I've got a nice rectangular parallel there. And I'll clamp those together. So, and I'm going to cut the tacks that are holding the rear end, the differential housing, to those mounts. I'm going to cut those tacks. So essentially what I'm doing here is hanging the supports. I'm hanging the 4-bar mount and the coilover mount. Those are one piece. And there's kind of this C-shaped saddle that the differential sits in. It's tacked to those mounts. I'm going to cut those tacks, hang the supports on this piece that I made. You see there's a hole in the bottom. On that side, it's got 2 holes. I actually made one at 16 inches and one at right height at 14 inches. Figured out, after I started doing it, I thought, you know what, I should be setting this up at right height, not how it sits before you put weight on the springs. So what I'm going to do, like I said, is fasten the hangers. Once I get that vertical piece that I built, these 2 pieces that I made here, once I get them nice and solid, then I'm going to cut the hangers loose from the differential and clamp them to the vertical piece, readjust the 4 bars so that, and it's a really minor adjustment. Readjust the 4 bars so the pieces are nice and tight against that hanging piece, and then lay the rear end back in those hangers and rotate the pinion to whatever angle I want, which is going to be roughly 2 degrees. The motor is at 4.50, and they say you want the 2 angles within 3 degrees of each other. So that's where we're shooting for. Anyway, and I gotta, I'm gonna take some more of this apart. I'm gonna take these backing plates off, the axles out, the third member out, so this thing is not, extremely heavy, doesn't want to tip over, all that other good stuff. It'll be easier to work with. It's a little extra work, but that's so be it. I don't mind that. I'm out here having a good time. I'm not out here worried about not doing work. So here we are. I'll show you more when there's, as Mark would say, when there's more to show. Bye. Okay, well, welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. It is Friday, September 9th. And you can see the mess is still here. This is what resulted after yesterday. Long, hot day here yesterday. I mean, it must have been in the 90s again at least. I was out here all day till roughly, I think, 7:30-ish, 8 o'clock last night. Still got to put that away. But this is where we ended up on Old Hank. Got the differential all hollowed out. Got these fixture pieces, the long straight tube you see there. It's kind of holding everything where it needs to be. You see, I got some tie wraps on the differential housing, trying to hold that at 2 degrees. That little digital level is very accurate, but boy, do you fight for 0.35, 0.50, whatever. It's almost too accurate. But at any rate, had all this apart yesterday. 4 bars were off. Like I said, the differential actually ended up coming out. I was trying to cut those perches off in place, and I did the first one. And it was a real fight from beginning to end. Trying to do it in place with all the stuff in the way. So once I got the first one cut off using the die grinder and the little air hacksaw and cold chisels, I said, you know what, screw this. I took the differential out, brought it over near the vise, and cut the other mount, what do you call it, perch thing off of it over there at the vise. So anyway, here it is, all ready to go. My son's coming over sometime today to tack it all up. The coil mounts are at 0 degrees, which is what the drawings, the little kit things said you're supposed to do. The 4 bars are at, they're plumb sideways. Plumb vertically, they're plumb, not front to back necessarily, but going sideways. That's plumb. Right now I got everything dialed in and it's pretty accurate according to what the drawing says. I'm really happy with it. I mean, it was a fight, but I'm really happy with it. It all seemed to come out right where it needs to be. I did not bother measuring front to back, corner to corner with the body on there. We had that, I remember, don't remember numbers, but I remember we had it all very accurate when we did it the first time. And I haven't moved anything to any, I didn't move anything 1/4 of an inch. I really did not go that far as front to back and all that stuff. All I've been doing is dealing with angles. So I'm really comfortable that it's still, directionally in the right location. So there you are. Like I say, Scott's coming over today to tack it all in. I'll be really happy when that happens. And then I'll put the rear end back together so I can finish off the e-brake thing. I need to have the rear end together with the brake shoes in it and everything else so I can finish the cabling and stuff on the e-brakes. I want to make sure that that's workable. I had it all set up and it felt like I was pulling awful hard on the cable. I doubled up the cables and never got that second cable installed. The modifications are done to accept the second cable, and I might want to extend one of the arms to make a little more leverage, and that's what I need to work on. And in order to test and make sure all of that stuff is functional, I need to have the rear brakes together. So I got to put most of this back together for that. Right now this thing has a 3.0 third member that I probably going to want to upgrade. That's a little high, I think. I probably want to go to a 3.25. I know Ford makes a 3.25, and that for me would be perfect. It would give me, under 3,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour with the tire sizes that I'm using. So I think that would be nice, and it would give me enough scoot with the 283. And this thing isn't supposedly the Model A pickup is 2,600 pounds roughly, so they're not that heavy. Anyway, talk to you later. Cheers. Hello. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. It is Saturday, September 10th. I made a little more progress on this. Scott came over yesterday and tacked everything that I had mocked up on the coilover mounts and the rear end mounting. I think I got all the angles. I'm comfortable that all the angles are what they should be. I got the differential all reassembled, put the brakes back together. So my next project to deal with is the e-brakes, the rear, e-brake. You see here, that's what you're looking at right there is a cross shaft. You see the e-brake cable comes off of it on that side, and it comes off of it on that side. Model A's originally had cross shafts like this to operate the mechanical brakes. So that's where this idea originated. This is nothing like what they did. I mean, this is all fabricated. And you see there's a hoop there for the drive shaft in the center. So this goes up to the handbrake lever, the e-brake lever looks like the original Model A e-brake lever. It's made to represent that. It's not original. It's on the side of a low car, I think, Turbo 350 shifter that's on the side of a Turbo 350. They make the e-brake handle that resembles the Model A to go on there. So there's a cable that comes from the bottom of that back to the lever you see there. When you pull that forward, it's going to put tension on the e-brake. So that's the next thing. I have to finish that. I need the little cable that goes from the handle inside the cab to that arm right there. I got it. In fact, I'm using two cables because I had this assembled earlier, like years earlier. And when you pull that handle, it would apply the brake, but it felt like you had to pull it awful hard, and that we're kind of stretching that cable. The cables are all 1/8 inch cables. So that main one, I either need to extend that little arm and make more leverage, or what I've done so far was doubled up the cables. So now I'll have 2 1/8 inch cables going from the handle to that lever, and then one on each side going to the rear wheels. Putting the brakes back on today, I feel like maybe the inside portion of that e-brake cable, the part with the spring that hooks to the little linkage that inside the brakes that operates the e-brake cable, that operates the brake shoes. I feel like that spring and the cable's a little bit too long. I need to shorten that because right now it's acting against, it's pulling against the action that would put the brake on. So it's adding the necessity for more tension on the cables. Like I said, so I'm gonna, I got to put the wheels on, put the brake drums on. I think I'm gonna do is remove those and open up the cables where they're attached right there, because you cut those off and there's multiple set screws where you end up with the end of the cable. I think I have that cable a little too long on both sides. They obviously got to be even, but I think they both need to be shortened a little bit, probably 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. So that's my next step. While the box is off, see, I got this big window here that I can work in without having to crawl up and down underneath the truck every time I want to, check something. I can do it all pretty much from the top side here. But that means, like I said, I got to take the wheels and the brake drums off one more time, I think, to mess with that. But that's the next thing I'm going to do. And then once I get past that, I'll put the bed on, because right now there isn't enough weight to compress the springs on the shocks. I have to have the bed back on to see if these springs end up giving me the ride height that I'm looking for. So anyway, that's it for now. We have made some progress here. That was quite a bit of work getting all those angles right. fixturing all that up so Scott could weld it. And like I said, I'm comfortable with the way that all turned out. So anyway, I'll show you more when there's more to show. For now, that's all I have. I spent some time cleaning this yesterday. It was all dusty. This was a side against the wall in the other garage. It was all very dusty here. I don't know if you can tell. It looks a lot better. So at any rate, thanks for watching. As always, please comment and thumbs up and comment if you would. I appreciate it. It might help get some it might help get my thumbnails up where people can view them and click on them. Talk to you later. Bye.